We are back from that amazing song session. I do hope that you enjoyed our song break. And coming down to the newspapers, we'll be beginning with the Daily Nation. And the very first top story here is experts query Ruto's tax plan. So slapping Kenyans with more taxes and levies will not lead to additional revenues. Parliament's economic think tank has told the government, which has revived some unpopular taxes withdrawn after public protests in June. So the Parliamentary Budget Office has cautioned the state against ambitious targets backed by introduction of new taxes and increase of others, even as Treasury issues proposals to roll out a set of new levies which had been rejected under the Finance Bill 2024. This is a story on page 4. And still on the top page, how Ruto camp plots to win back hostile Central. So Mount Kenya leaders avoiding hostile residents after they helped President William Ruto to impeach former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua are now planning a grand comeback in the region as others wait in the wings after their rivals fall. That's a story covered on page 7. And still on the top page, I see here on education, inside Kuppet, Ruto State House talks. So officials of the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers on Saturday sought the president's support in their quest for better working conditions. What did they reap from their meeting? You can look at that on page 5. And coming down to the second page, I see today's story here on page 2 is Aringo shaves beard, Moi grooms him for high table. His office at Jogoo House transformed into a mini empire, complete with a secretary, an official Ford Cortina, and a driver. Quite the upgrade from his previous life as an MP. His salary soared from a mere 8,000 to a plush 25,000 shillings, and he scored a furnished house in Loresho. This is a story on page 2, and this is in 1991 when Aringo lost his lofty cabinet position when Olo Aringo bid farewell to his KANU chairmanship and was given the boot from the cabinet. He became a backbencher just as the multi-party crusade gathered steam. And coming down to page 3, I see experts deliver harsh verdict is the story that we covered on the top page, and just more on the same. So the Parliamentary Budget Office has cautioned the state against ambitious targets backed by the introduction of new taxes, as we read, and the PBO notes that the current fiscal year ordinary revenue targets of 2.6 trillion, including income taxes of 1.2 trillion, value-added tax of 723.8 billion, excise duty of 324 billion, and import duty of 160 billion is also a very long shot. That's a story on page 4. And page 5 is the story that we touched on the top page as well, inside Kuppet Ruto State House talks, and you can also look at the same. So Dr. Ruto is said to have assured the union of the high premium he puts on stakeholder engagement and urged Kuppet to support the government in delivering its flagship projects. And he also acknowledged that as the representative teachers, Kuppet may have grievances that the TSC may not address by itself, and this include the allocation of funds for new employment. This is a story on page 5. And coming here to page 6, suspicious court e-filing glitch in Gachagua's case. So 3 petitioners allege intent to defeat justice after their payment was reversed. So case was to be considered before the National Assembly voted to endorse DP nominee Kithure Kindiki. And I see here that the 3 petitioners have complained about interference with filing of petition E568 of 2024 with intent to defeat justice, citing questionable collapse of the e-filing payment system and suspect refund effected without the payee's request that effectively blocked the petition. And they say they uploaded the petition, application, certificate of urgency, and all annexures at 1:40 a.m. but were unable to complete payment up to 2:12 a.m. That's a story on page 6. And moving on to the DN2 today on the junior sports, CBC has unlocked our creativity, which is very true. I mean, I have seen children really get to another level of creativity with the CBC being introduced. And we hope and continue to pray that this is going to be a great opportunity even for our children later on. They may not really depend on employment, but actually be creative to create employment themselves. So we see here a feature about how school curriculum helps budding fashion designers grow their skills. And I see some people here wearing kills. Well, it's fashion. We can't say much. And also a shopping bag here. Children making these. And Adrian and Ryan love making fashion outfits using locally available materials like Skuma Wiki, which is very interesting. But you can look at that story that is on the DN2 today. Very, very creative. That's on page 2 of the DN2. I really love this because children, as young as they are, developing interest in something is good, and they are using their time quite well. And especially now during the holidays, they can definitely be encouraged to do a thing or two even as they are celebrating the holidays. And moving on, coming down to the counties today. Coming down to the counties this morning. Let's actually start with the business. Business here, I see CMA Treasury fire race for carbon trade. Billions pair steps up efforts to create a clear trading platform as world goes green. And I see funding pressure piles up as candidates seat KCSE results. That is on the DN2 bit of the higher education. And now coming down to the sports pages this morning. Menengai Oilers Savara maiden flood is title. Club hopes to use maiden Tony title as a springboard to Kenya Cup success. And then still on the sports page, Sudan leave Harambee stars clutching at straws. That's a story on page 31. And the back page, dominant Kenyan women rule New York. So Chep Kirui leads Obiri and Cheruiyot in 1-2-3 podium sweep. In women's race, Dutch runner Nageye wins men's race. This is a story on the back page of the Daily Nation. And now moving on to the Standard, just briefly, the very top story here is called Insecurity Storm. Kenya's human rights record faces intense scrutiny as both citizens and international allies sound alarms over a surge in abductions and forced disappearances and killings. The West is pressuring Kenya to uphold democratic principles and protect civil liberties amidst mounting tension and calls for accountability from rights groups and diplomats alike. This is a story on pages 6 and 7. Here on the top page, it is true that we have a big problem. Our young people, especially girls, are being killed arbitrarily instead of showing them love. It has now turned into killing them. This is William Ruto saying that. And still on the top page here, I see greed and graft combined to tear down Amboseli. Irregular land allocation, human encroachment, and allegations of human rights abuse forms the core of a simmering conflict in one of Kenya's most crucial ecosystems, and that is Amboseli. And coming to the second page, book serialization, pain of hair loss, dark moment after the death of my mother and grandmother. And in the wake of intense Naivasha constitutional talks in early 2010, Millie Odhiambo lost all her hair, ending up in a hospital bed. In the race for Mbita parliamentary seat, it just didn't rain for her. It poured instead. She lost the only parent she had, her mother, and a host of other relatives in a quick succession. She endured public humiliation for lacking a child of her own, survived bouts of violence by rivals, and was caught up in propaganda blitz for protecting her vote. In public eye, though, everything was going on well for the MP. In the third installment of her book's realization, Rig or Be Rigged, Millie unveils the other side of politicians as ordinary mortals susceptible to fear, depression, hurt, and other perils. Beautiful story. You can look at that on page 3 on the book Rig or Be Rigged. Page 4, Kenya's asylum image tainted as Turkish nationals are deported. So the government's extradition raises questions about commitment to protecting refugees. Human rights advocates condemn the deportation, fearing for the safety of those under asylum. And page 6 is, of course, a story that we have covered on Ruto facing local international backlash over rising abductions. So foreign nations are pressuring Ruto to rein in those involved. And sources say abduction officers are a team of 50 supported by the NIS, among others. And page 7, we see that Ruto has vowed to tackle rising femicide cases. We know that it has been really too much. We've lost so many young and even older women to these femicide attacks in the recent actually recently, not even in the recent past, but this has been happening recently. Let's continue to pray for our nation, to pray for our women, to pray for our girls and mothers and sisters. I believe that God is in control. And look at that story on page 7 on how Ruto plans to tackle these femicide cases that are happening. And of course, moving on to page 10, from extradition to acquittal, the troubling saga of Yagnesh Devani. That story on page 10. And today on the health and science, that is the costly burden of dementia. From a life of stability to 2 years as a full-time caregiver, Lucia Mwanzia shares the journey of caring for her husband through progressive frontotemporal dementia, a story of sacrifice, stigma, and unshakable commitment. We have touched on this on our segment on One Day at a Time. We did have some caregivers come here and tell us about how difficult it actually is, and you can look at that story in more details on the Health and Science today. And that feature is very beautiful. Lucia Mwanzia, wife and caregiver, saying stay strong and just make sure that you love them, and then you understand them, and then you support them with all you have. Speaking from a woman here who has experience. And moving on to the counties, communities clash as rulings on land dispute ignite fresh tensions. Ogiek Council of Elders files appeal against landmark settlement decision. So residents urge swift action to secure land rights amid ongoing conflicts. Look at that story that is on page 19 of the counties, page 17 and page 19 as well, still on the counties stories. Today on the Business Standard, over half of banks face mergers, acquisitions in CBK-backed rules. And coming to the sports page this morning, Chep Kirui crowns it for Kenya with New York title. Nageye of the Netherlands wins New York Marathon men's title. We did cover that on the Daily Nation. And the Business Daily today, World Bank resists push to end Kenya power monopoly. Bank warns of surge in prices, contracts backlash, caution delivered through IMF at Washington, D.C. Meeting. That's a story on the Business Daily this morning. And of course, coming down to the last word is pursue the things you love doing and then do them so well that people can't take their eyes off of you. This is from Maya Angelou, an American memories poet and also civil rights activist. And that's it for our newspaper review. We continue to pray for our nation each and every single day. We need to continue to do that, because if Kenya prospers, we too are going to prosper. Let's do less of complaining and more of prayer. I believe that God is in control, and at the right time, all justice will be served. So let us now go to the video of the day, have a look at it, and then when we come back, we'll have a chat about it.